Hey everyone, William Diaz here with Rebel News, and this is week 5 of the Emergencies Act inquiry, where we began the week by hearing interesting testimonies from relatively unknown witnesses outside of local Ontario politics, Drew Dilkins and Jason Crowley. And stay tuned with me because while their names might not be familiar with you, their testimonies are extremely revealing, and you'll want to hear why. The inquiry, once again, folks, is taking place because Justin Trudeau decided to invoke in February a never-seen-before anti-terrorism law on protesters who travel from coast to coast to coast to protest his COVID-19 mandates in Ottawa. The peaceful demonstrations were known as the Freedom Convoy. The first few weeks of testimony were fascinating. We heard from former Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, failed Ottawa mayoral candidate, Catherine McKenney, Ottawa Police Services officers, Ontario Provincial Police officers as well, OPS former interim chief Steve Bell, the man he replaced for the short time for former Ottawa Police Chief Peter Soley. And from the other side, we heard Freedom Convoy leaders and protesters. This includes Tamara Leach, Tom Morazzo, Chris Barber, Chris Deering. Now, on the 18th day of the commission, Drew Dilkins, mayor from the city of Windsor, located in Ontario, began the day by testifying. Here are some highlights from his testimony.
But it was the nature and sort of the spirit of the protest. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. You know, I've lived my whole life in the city of Windsor. It's unlike anything I've ever seen during that time. And the posture and the language was, you know, it was almost as if folks wanted some sort of brawl on the streets. You know, they were hoping police would engage in that way so they could have some sort of, you know, brawl on the streets.
I think you told the commissioner no negotiations were successful in any material way to resolve this protest.
Not in any lasting way.
Right.
Windsor's Ambassador Bridge, a main trade route with Detroit, was blocked for nearly a week by protesters, but it reopened the day before the Emergencies Act was used after the protest ended.
The blockade was cleared and the bridge reopened before the Emergencies Act was invoked. Is that right?
On the 14th, so the 13th around midnight into the 14th, I think the bridge opened around midnight on the 14th. So the Emergencies Act was invoked sometime on the 14th. So yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, great. So none of the measures in the Emergencies Act were used to clear the blockade since it came after, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for you.
One of the most interesting moments from Dilkins' testimony was when Brendan Miller, a lead barrister for Freedom Convoy organizers, cross-examined him. And this is because Miller had a little trick up his sleeve. Miller brought up a CSIS document, and while he did agree with the objection when lawyers objected to his line of questioning in relation to the document was still entered in the record, and the document is extremely revealing and important. Take a look.
I just want you to see that. So on that document there, on February 3rd, CSIS assessed there was no indicators that known IMVEs, and I take it you know what that is, actors were planning to engage in violence. And then if you scroll down to the other bullet points, it states on February 13th, CSIS advised that the implementation of the EA would likely galvanize the anti-government narrative within the convoy and further radicalize of some towards violence, referring to the increase in violent rhetoric following the declaration of the state of emergency in the province of Ontario. Furthermore, CSIS advised thank you. Furthermore, CSIS advised that the invocation of the EA by the federal government would likely lead to the dispersing of the convoy within Ottawa, but would likely increase the number of Canadians who hold extreme anti-government views and push some towards the belief that violence is the only solution to what they perceived as a broken system and government. Following the invocation of the EA, CSIS briefed Cabinet and reiterated the potential for the EA to increase anti-government views and violent ideologies, including in those not yet radicalized. Now, can you agree with me that you would never want to do anything that could create further radicalization of extremists within the city of Windsor? Is that fair?
I'm going to object to this question on this document.
Withdrawn.
And object to this document being put to the mayor.
Then Jason Crowley from Windsor Police Services took the stand and testified. Watch some of the highlights from his testimony, and then I'll speak about what went on when he underwent cross-examination by, once again, Brendan Miller.
So we were of the mindset, amongst other police services in the province, we were trying to find that balance of people's ability and right under the charter to protest. We felt it was better to work with the protesters to facilitate their slow rolls. It maintained public safety, which is what we were concerned about. And we did not certainly want to escalate any situation. And it was in the model of the way slow rolls were being policed throughout the province.
Now, Brendan Miller, lawyer for Freedom Corp, the Convoy Corporation, in the specific cross-examination, Miller touched on widely reported allegations that protesters were using children as human shields.
Confirmation bias. Strategic analysis must be driven by direct evidence collection and assessment as opposed to reliance on social media posting as it lacks context and where the poster's bias may not be considered. Would you agree with that?
Potentially, yes. But I can say that, like I said, I don't even think I saw this. But when it talks about real evidence, when I heard the protesters themselves on the open chat talking about human shields, children as human shields, and seeing a picture with children holding hands across the intersection at here in church and college in the early stages, that's hard evidence for me.
Okay. And of course, you followed up on investigating that and making sure that, you know, that wasn't an issue?
Our special investigations unit was definitely involved, and they deal with the children, the crimes against children, along with CSIS for sure.
Okay. And you can agree there that the report there from the 12th from OPP says no persons were observed outside. There was no children were observed, but believed to be inside a camper. If we can scroll down. Only Canadian flags observed. That's it. So you can agree based on that report, as of the 12th, according to the OPP, that wasn't really an issue.
Not at this time, for sure.
And again, you agree possibly with what I said to you with respect to essentially the validity of relying on social media alone, right?
We did not rely on it alone, but I would agree with that. You cannot rely on it alone, yes.
Following the testimonies, Rebel News invited Convoy lawyers Keith Wilson, Eva Chipik, and Alan Honor from the Democracy Fund to discuss the day's proceedings. All three had very interesting things to say. If you missed it, please know that you can watch us live every weekday on YouTube from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Watch some of what Keith and Eva had to say about the proceedings.
If we're going to be talking about whether there was a national security threat, who are we going to be asking the question of? It's CSIS. That's the federal, intelligence department.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he brought that up. And what did it say on February 13th is it said, our recommendation is not to invoke the Emergencies Act because that will actually, in my words, in my summary, cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
He was concerned that it would elicit more extremist views and more violence because people were concerned about the breakdown with the system and the government. So you see that kind of evidence come through, and it's nobody else is talking about it.
Should be no surprise by any elected official, whether it's the mayor of Windsor or anyone else, as to why there was an unprecedented protest. It's because there was an unprecedented overreach in the most un-Canadian way imaginable by these governments. And the last holdout was Justin Trudeau. What a lot of people don't remember is the G7 countries did not have a restriction preventing unvaccinated from traveling within their country.
Yeah.
They did not do these things. Canada was an anomaly. And it was clearly, and you guys know that I'm also legal counsel to former Premier Brian Feckford on the charter, the travel mandate challenge. So I had the opportunity to cross-examine all of the key government officials. None of them recommended the vaccine mandate. We saw in that case, and we're seeing it yet again, that this is political puppeteering by the Prime Minister and the people around him and his cabinet to put forward their very cynical political game.
And in fact, they were arresting protesters
on the sidewalk if they were within that exclusion zone.
That's right.
And I thought that was very interesting because, back on February 11th and later on February 18th, we made submissions about this injunction. And both times we made sure that we could carve out a provision in that order which respected the rights of protesters to peacefully protest.
Well, there you have it, folks. Your rundown for the 18th day of the Emergencies Act inquiry. Thank you for watching and for your attention. This is William Diaz here with Rebel News. Guys, if you want to help us fund our trip here in Ottawa, if you want to help us cover everything that is going on here at 395 Wellington, which is the building where the commission is being held every single day, please head on to truckercommission.com.